Well, for more on how the shooter got so close to the president and how security is operating in Milwaukee, we're joined live by CTV public safety analyst Chris Lewis. Thanks for joining us, Chris. I want to get your initial thoughts to what took place, and as a former police officer, commissioner of the OPP, how would you describe the magnitude of the failure of this security operation here?
Hi, Jamie, and thanks for having me. The failure here is colossal. They almost had the former president of the United States, and a leading contender for election, shot and killed in front of a crowd. And an innocent civilian was killed, and two other innocent civilians were badly injured. This is a failure of epic proportions on the part of the Secret Service.
Chris, how is it possible in this day and age, with the amount of security preparations that go into these kind of events that have site surveys days and weeks before, the amount of technology that's up in the air from drones, and just the amount of security personnel, how was it possible that someone was able to get up? And we're not talking hundreds of yards away. We're just talking just over 100 yards away. That was a clear line of sight to the president. How does something like this happen?
Well, what you just described, Jamie, it really sums up the situation, but the ball got dropped in there. There's no doubt that within their operating procedures and standard stuff, right, for them for every presidential visit, all the buildings within sight and within gun range have to be secured. They have to have police officers lock them up and make sure nobody gets in, and so guarding the place or standing on the roof themselves with rifles. The bottom line is there's no way in heck that should have been allowed to happen. And I mean, so it wasn't like the procedures were poorly written, or that they've dropped the ball in some way on planning for these events. They just didn't check all the boxes, is the bottom line.
Could there have been a breakdown of some sort of communication between local police forces and security and the Secret Service, who were stationed in certain parts of this rally? Could that be an issue?
Yeah, for sure. The head of the Secret Service for that site, the commander for that day and that event, has ultimate responsibility. So you just can't blame someone along the way. It has to go to the top. It's like fire the chief in a hockey team. But the bottom line is they can't be everywhere and do everything. So they rely on state police and local police that have the ability. That's a small community. Local police aren't going to have a quality SWAT team or anything like that. But the state police do, ultimately. Great department of the Pennsylvania State Police. So the breakdown of communication from my perspective is that people were seeing the guy crawl up there and were hollering and screaming and letting local police know, and they all go into one command post in terms of the radio communications. So they should have said, "Man on the roof," and the Secret Service would have got Trump off the stage. And then once things settled down, he'd have gone back on and said, "Well, that was fun," and gave his speech. But that didn't happen.
Now we're shifting our focus to the Republican National Convention that's happening in Milwaukee. Secret Service gave an update yesterday live on TV that many critics were criticizing for their public relations. And I'm curious, how does this change things moving forward? Not only for just the Republican National Convention, but for the next several months of this U.S. presidential election, at a time when there's so much division and there's so much tension, and the climate is so high right now in the country.
For sure, and it shouldn't affect this particular event that's occurring inside. Inside events are easier to contain. Your inner perimeter ends at the door of the outside of the building, and your outer perimeter, which still has a strong presence to prevent vehicles and explosives, etc., that'll still be extremely well staffed, as it always would be. And then you're not going to have a building within line of sight inside that major event where every single person will be searched very thoroughly with metal detectors, etc. So you shouldn't have that same problem inside that building. Going forward, though, there's going to be lots of outside events. So you can be sure that the standard operating procedures will be totally followed, as they always were. They don't have to create new policy or new procedures. They just have to follow the ones they had in place. And so we'll see that in huge numbers going forward. They will not allow this to happen again.
CTV's public safety analyst, Chris Lewis, we appreciate your time or perspective. Thank you.